Good afternoon, class. My name is Ethen COF. Quick question. How many of us have more than one social media platform? Keep your hands raised if you have more than 100 followers. Wow, you guys are popular. Tell me your secret after. So keep your hands raised if you are in frequent contact with each individual of those followers. Thoughts up. Social media is typically used to keep us connected. Ironically, it's actually disconnecting us from each other. My claim of fact that I will be presenting today is that interpersonal communication skills is becoming impaired with the advancement of social media. The first point I'll be using is that, to support my claim, is that social media affects self-confidence. It is allowing people to hide behind the screen. With the ever-growing popularity, with the ever-growing popularity of social media, comes the ability to create a false fantasy. If you want to be taller, you can be. If you want green eyes, blue eyes, you can have that. Hell, you can have a mixture of both. Are you guys familiar with the term catfish? For those of you who aren't familiar with it, Wired Magazine's Molly McHugh defines catfish as a means to lure someone into a relationship by adopting a fictional persona. The term is derived from a TV show. The show is about two hosts that devote their time and effort to helping people who have fallen victim to those portraying a false life behind the screen. The reason they do this is because social media, in a sense, pushes them to do so by portraying unrealistic expectations as the norm. Normally with social media posts, it's all about the perfect life, the nice car, the nice job, the nice, etc. Ray Jacobson, a writer and content engagement specialist at the Child Mind Institute, has stated, several students who have died have projected a perfect image on social media, but behind the digital curtain they were struggling emotionally. This lack of communication continues to be a concern in the growing age of social media. Which brings me to my next point. Social media is affecting communication. A lot of relationships are being affected by this. We wake up, we check our phone. The moment before we go to sleep, we check our phone. Drop line. The point is that for many users of social media, it consumes the majority of our time. I know right before this class I was on my phone just going through social media. Communication expert author Leslie Shore warns that those that have limited experience in reading people do not have the same level of social intelligence previous generations possessed, and building a stronger, deeper relationship will take more time and will be more difficult to maintain. That lack of connection with one another can lead to misinterpretation. That misinterpretation, Gesundheit, can lead to miscommunication. Communication consultant coach Susan Tardanico states, studies show that only 7% of communication is based off of written and verbal word. 93% is nonverbal. Twitter is one of the most highly used apps to share your thoughts and feelings, all within a 140 count limit, of course. With that limitation, a lot of information can be misread or misinterpreted. So with Twitter and other social media apps, 93% of communication is left unsaid. From that, it could I'm sorry, I totally drew a blank. It was supposed to lead into how abbreviations, we make false assumptions based off of this. We're left to making false assumptions based off of abbreviations, snippets, emojis, for example, and the truth isn't fully stated. With the truth not fully stated, we're having a huge psychological effect being given on this. Which brings me to my final point. Social media has a negative effect on us psychologically. Social media releases a high amount of dopamine that many are becoming reliant on. Dopamine is a chemical that is produced by the brain stimuli to motivate and promote behavior. Typically, it is released during moments of joy and ecstasy. Dopamine, as stated by Trevor Haynes at Harvard University, stated, cognitive neuroscientists have shown that rewarding social stimuli, every notification, text message alike, has the potential to be a positive social stimulus and dopamine reflex. With that amount of dopamine constantly being released, it could lead to dependency. That dependency can lead to addiction, and the addiction could lead to depression. Trevor Haynes has also reported studies are beginning to show links between smartphone usage and increased levels of anxiety, depression, poor sleep quality, and increased risk of car injury or death. Caroline Miller, an editorial director of the Child Mind Institute, has stated, 2017 study of over 500,000 8th through 12th graders found that the number of exhibiting high levels of depressive symptoms increased by 33% between the years of 2010 and 2015. Some experts see the rise in depression as evidence that the connection social media users form electronically are less emotionally satisfying, leaving them feeling socially isolated. To conclude, interpersonal skills are becoming impaired with the advancement of social media due to it affecting our self-confidence, which can lead to miscommunication, and from that miscommunication can have a serious negative effect on us psychologically. The end.
All right, Ethan, the proposition is clearly identified after you use a little bit of an attention device to get us going by asking us to participate in your survey. It sounded like there was going to be a preview of the supporting points, but you really just used that to go into your first point, so I know what that is. So there's not really a setup or a roadmap for what's coming up in the speech, but you did have an organized presentation in the body of the speech. I could pick out the individual points that you're talking about, and usually when you're transitioning between those points, you do have a numerical signpost to go with those points, so it's not that hard to keep track of what you're doing. You just need to do a little bit of road mapping at the beginning of the speech. Pacing could probably help the presentation. I know you got stuck a couple of times trying to remember something that you're going to say. The outline, if you're going to have notes, which you did have some notes, it didn't hurt to have the outline with the major points on it so that you could remind yourself where you were headed. You didn't seem dependent on the notes, but you did need to have to kind of struggle a couple of times to remember what it was you were going to say next, and a prompt somewhere would be helpful. The supporting information, I think, needs to be, it's okay. I mean, you've got a definition of catfishing, and you've got this idea that people can be anything they want to be online, and that they can project a positive image. And I'm going, okay, well, that sounds good. What's harmful about this, that I think there is not really explanation for. That there's some negative consequence. I think that is the assumption here, but I don't know what that negative consequence is. On the second point, when you suggest that there's an impact on our ability to communicate with others, you sort of explain what's going on there. You do have a quote there that talks about how we are going to lack skills that previous generations had, and that sounds like it comes from an authority, somebody who's expert, but we don't really know what those skills are. There's no way to quantify it and what we're going to be losing. The notion that our nonverbal communication makes up the vast majority of meaning, I think that's a valuable point to have there, and your citation of the data on that is good. What you need to do is you need to show that the current social media prevent us from having that sort of nonverbal communication. You yourself suggested, though, at one point that there's a whole bunch of stuff that people are using online as a way of addressing that issue, and you're suggesting there's going to be a misunderstanding of emojis and abbreviations. My guess would be most people would just say, no, that's a second language. It's not a misunderstanding. We've expanded the way that we can communicate non-verbally by using these kinds of tools to prevent that misunderstanding. There's nothing that quantifies any misunderstanding or mistakes that are going on, so I think that that's something that's missing in this part of the argument. I just happened to have heard something in the previous class. There was some statistical information about the number of people who check their phones and interact with social media while they're engaged in other social behaviors. For example, having dinner with their families, or here's a good one, answering their messages while they're having sex. That seemed to me like it would be one of those things that would be a good indicator that perhaps our interpersonal skills are in some way being harmed by our dependence on the media. Your last point, talking about the negative effects, mostly it has to do with the kind of addictive nature of this, and I think you explained how dopamine might create an addiction on this. I'm not exactly sure that this is going to be substantially different from other things that people get a thrill from, getting up and seeing the sunshine, driving out and putting the top down on the car, having a great meal. Why is it different online? And there probably is a reason that it's different online because of the number of followers that we have, or the number of likes, and the frequency with which we check those things. I think you need to connect those things all together a little bit more. Your argument is generally clear. Like I said, I thought you had some good general information on this. I think you need more to make it a more convincing and sufficient argument. All right, thank you.